Well, thank you, and I'm very, very grateful to be here today. Thank you very much to the Dubai Press Club for asking me back to Dubai. This is the first time I've been to Dubai since 2007. Quite a lot has changed, it turns out, since 2007. So I'm very honoured to be asked to speak here at Dubai PodFest. And firstly, may I wish you a happy International Podcasting Day. So it's a busy day for me. I write a daily newsletter about podcasting and on demand. It's called Pod News, and I'm the editor. I've been in the audio business now for the last 35 years. I know, I don't look that old. It's amazing. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take a look back at the last year of podcasting since we were here last year. I'm going to look at some data from the region, and I'm going to take a look at where the future is going in terms of podcasting. And really, as we look back at the last year, it's been a story all about AI. AI has been the big thing in podcasting. It's been pretty well everywhere, from editing tools to replace those razor blades, to host-read ads produced by AI, to new ways of editing audio and video, and of course ad targeting and cloned voices as well. YouTube was also a really big thing over the last year. In March, YouTube announced podcast upload tools where you could mark a video as a podcast. Now they have made many additional tools available, and we're seeing YouTube now being responsible for a lot of consumption. Paramount, for example, a large media company in the US, they suggest that YouTube is now responsible for 61% of its podcast plays. It's a very large thing. Now, it has, though, been a pretty bad year for some people, particularly in the US. Spotify actually made a total of 2,300 job cuts. There have been job cuts at old podcasting companies like This Week in Tech, and some large companies have gone out of business as well. There's been a bit of a reset in terms of revenue expectation, and it hasn't been a fun year for some people. And then there was the change that Apple made. 3 weeks after the launch of iOS 17, Apple told us that it had made a small change in how downloads worked. And we were told it was such a small change that in a brilliant editorial move, I made it story number 6 on that day, on October the 12th. But we kept on hearing stories that it wasn't a small change. It was, in fact, a large change. And it took time for iOS 17 to roll out to all users, but it's wiped out around 15% of all downloads. And that small change cost Acast $7.2 million in contract revaluations, and other companies even more. Now, let's be clear, better figures are good for the industry. They're the right thing to do. It was the right change to make, but it did come as a big surprise for the industry, and it's also cost many jobs. So a heads up next time from Apple would be really good. But notwithstanding all of that stuff, it's been a good year for podcasting. Spotify has turned a corner and killed the exclusive. Big shows like Joe Rogan or Call Her Daddy and more are now available in open RSS in what the company calls a new podcast strategy. And in fact, exclusivity wasn't what the creator wanted. Just ask Daniel Ek, the boss of Spotify. This is good news for podcasting. Revenue is increasing. Spotify is now in profit. Audio Boom is now in profit. Many others are approaching profit as well. Apple, Pocket Casts, and other apps have added transcripts, making podcasting more accessible to more people. What else have we seen? Well, in a big change last year, on demand is now more popular than live audio in the US. That's a massive, massive change. And in many different countries, podcasters are now the most trusted people in media, according to studies. And there's been plenty of positive change in the Arab world for podcasting as well. Launches of new programs, some by the Dubai Press Club. We've seen new podcast hubs, new apps, and big show acquisitions. The rest of the world is more and more looking here to learn about podcast growth. So I'm really excited to be here to learn from you all. Now, secondly, I wanted to show you some new data with you. This is data that's not been seen before. It's data from a set of data from a company called OP3, or from an organization called OP3. Firstly, let me just put it into some context. This is where we are in terms of the total amount of podcasts which are available in Apple Podcasts, 2.7 million. Now, you might look at that and you might think, gosh, that's a bit scary. If I've got a podcast, I'm competing with another 2.7 million podcasts. Well, that's kind of true, but it's also kind of not, because actually you're really only competing with about 300,000 shows, which are the shows which are currently being updated. So in terms of competition, much less competition than you would have thought. And the biggest primary category at the moment is education, which has over 400,000 shows, then society and culture, business, arts, and religion in there. So to the data from OP3. Now, OP3 is a free and open source analytics service for podcasting. It measures over 2,000 shows. Completely open source. The data is completely open as well, and it allows anyone to do what I've done with the data here through its API. OP3 also measures all of my own shows, and I'd love to see more shows using the data in the future, particularly shows that take money from their audience, because if you take money from your audience, you probably owe it to your audience to tell them how many downloads you're getting. We're a financial supporter of OP3 as well. Now, I've pulled a week's worth of data from OP3, and you can see some of the numbers here. 4 million total downloads, 2.3 million total listeners, and so on and so forth. I'd really like to ensure that OP3 is used by as many people as possible, but right now just know that, like any podcast data, it's going to be slightly skewed, not entirely representative of the whole of podcasting. Particularly, it'll be skewed towards English language shows rather than anything else. And I would love to hear, maybe there's someone here that might be able to help OP3 translate its interface into Arabic as well. Now, I should say, by the way, a download is the same as a stream. There's no such thing as a stream in the world of open podcasting. So the first data that I discovered was this, and it's data that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone in this room. 94% of all podcasts are listened to on a mobile phone. Many other bits of data will tell you the same thing, so that's good because it shows that this data is pretty accurate in terms of that. Computers at 4%, smart speakers at 1%, even smaller things like smart TVs and tablets. So it's a mobile phone thing, useful to know. But I thought, what apps are people using? We all know the global figures, but while I'm here, what apps are people using here? So here's the data from the UAE. And it is a two-horse race, as it is in every country in the world, pretty well, between Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Interestingly, you are one of only a handful of countries where Apple Podcasts is still in the lead, but very close in terms of Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Have a good website, which is the third element, Safari here. And all of the rest, a quarter of all of the downloads, are from other open podcast apps. So make sure you're in as many of these directories as you possibly can be. And again, I think that this is the first time that this data has been seen. Let's take a look at other countries. And you can see that in the US, it's all Apple. There's a lot of downloads for Apple. And the same goes for the UK and Australia. India, by the way, you see the blue there, the second most popular podcast app in India. That's Amazon Music. So if you're not in Amazon Music, then you probably should be. Go and make sure that you're there as well. But let's take a look at some of the Arab world here. The UAE you've just seen. In Saudi, 45% of consumption happens on Apple Podcasts. But then you start looking at places like Egypt, Qatar and Kuwait, which are showing very much that it's Spotify's world, which it is in many other parts of the world, including Asia and much of South America as well. And finally, something quite interesting coming out of this data. Because OP3 knows the time zone of the person who downloads the audio, we can actually work out when people are downloading audio, and we find out that people in California wake up an hour earlier than people in the UK. Who knew? So some interesting data from there. And actually, people in California wake up an hour earlier than people in New York. And I showed this to some Americans, and I said, "Is this right?" And they said, yeah, absolutely it is. So anyway, some fascinating and global data there for the first time. Please do consider adding your show there. It's entirely free. So finally, let's take a look at where we are headed in terms of the podcast industry. The first trend is most definitely around open podcasting. Exclusive shows on exclusive platforms were a thing a few years ago, but they're not a thing anymore in most markets. What makes podcasting great is that the technology is open, not closed. So anyone can make a podcast and anyone can get into those directories. And we need to ensure that podcasting is open and avoid the idea of exclusive shows in apps, because they don't work. Secondly, caution. Caution, brand safety. Brand safety is, well, there are robots listening to every show and making choices based on the words that they hear. If you mention bad things, then these brand safety robots will tell advertisers not to advertise in your show. Now, some of these robots, some of these brand safety tools are trained by the West. They use Western culture and they use Western understanding, and they don't deal well with local customs or with context. Brand safety is a really good idea if done well, and you will see a great company doing brand safety well in the next session tomorrow from Barometer. But if done badly, it can have very bad effects on podcasting. So treat brand safety with caution. Thirdly, video podcasting. This area is getting bigger and bigger as both Spotify and YouTube spend money on video podcasting. Now, this does make podcasting more difficult because all of a sudden we need to think about lighting and cameras and how you look and more of that complication. And you need to change the way that you make your show. And you don't need video. Video may not be appropriate for your show. If you make an audio-first show with video, it'll reach more people. But here's where Arab countries lead the way. The most popular podcast episode on YouTube anywhere in the world is from KSA. The team have just been awarded a world record in terms of total viewership. This is an area where the rest of the world is looking to learn from you. And finally, the power of open podcasting using RSS and working together to enhance that with Podcasting 2.0. Podcasting 2.0, if you've not heard of it, is a new set of features which has given us creator-made transcripts in podcast apps, like Pocket Casts or Podcast Addict or Apple Podcasts itself, which uses Podcasting 2.0 standards. And it can offer much more too. Better ways to discover new podcasts, better ways to listen to existing ones. It's the first time for a long time that people are working together to enhance podcasting for audiences. And I'm thrilled to end up seeing that. So I'm really grateful to be here. It's wonderful to be back in Dubai and seeing how much Dubai has changed in the last 15 years. I'm really looking forward to learning more from you all about the future of podcasting. So have a great conference. Shukran, and keep listening. Thank you.